Britain threatens to use non-nuclear weapons or non-NATO nuclear weapons. Russia has located the SAS forces in Ukraine. And Russia responded in saying, your island is the #1 target. They're talking about the United Kingdom if this happens. British SAS forces have entered Ukraine. Russian media has reported, noted that they are experts in sabotage operations and guerrilla warfare. Their goal is to carry out attacks in Crimea, southern and eastern Ukraine on Russian-controlled territories. Moscow is threatening to say this could be considered as an official entry of Britain into the war against Russia. Russian-Britain tensions have escalated in the last 48 hours with Johnson, that's Boris Johnson, threatening Russia with non-NATO nuclear weapons. London has entered the war against us. The appearance of British SAS special forces in Lviv can be considered as a direct entry of London or NATO, because London, Britain, is a part of NATO, into an armed conflict with Russia. Russian sources emphasize, and they add, London continues to show pure hostility toward Moscow. Great Britain sent military forces into the territory of Ukraine. We are talking about at least 24 members of their special forces of the well-known SAS of the United Kingdom Armed Forces. The special British forces were sent into 2 groups of 12 people each. They are experts in sabotage, guerrilla warfare, coup organization, mass demonstrations, assassination of state leaders, recruitments of agents, and preparations of terrorist attacks. They are currently at the disposal of the 16th Army Air Brigade, Brady, 16th Brigade Military Unit, A2595, Checkpoint B3765, in the city of the same name in the Lviv region. The British arrived from Hereford, England, where the SAS Crendon Hill training base is located and the 22nd SAS Regiment is parked. British Special Forces in Lviv can be seen as a direct entry of Great Britain or NATO into an armed conflict with Russia. Britain threatens with nuclear weapons without NATO approval. In an unusual move, the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson threatened a nuclear attack without NATO approval. In particular, Boris Johnson announced that the United Kingdom is considering launching a nuclear strike without coordinating the move with other partners in the North Atlantic Alliance or NATO. Mr. Johnson did not disclose the reasons for his decision to pursue a nuclear strike without NATO approval, but the British Prime Minister's statement came amid successful tests of Russia's RS-28 Sarmat Satan II missile, intercontinental ballistic missiles, and the deployment of British forces in Britain. I think they meant Ukraine. This has caused concern for the United Kingdom, as according to British experts, this missile alone is enough to destroy an area of about 250,000 square kilometers. In the event of the use of weapons of mass destruction, the United Kingdom reserves the right to retaliate on its own without consulting other NATO countries, said Boris Johnson. Russia, the loop fits very well with Johnson. Your island will disappear. So Russia is also threatening if Britain nukes Russia, they will eliminate the United Kingdom from the face of the earth, folks. It says your island will disappear. The response came promptly from Russian state television controlled by the Kremlin. A Russian lawmaker has sent nuclear threats to Britain and Boris Johnson. In particular, a Russian MP on Russian state television stressed that Russia can also use nuclear weapons without consulting NATO. Speaking, he suggested that Johnson be hanged, noting that a loop suits him very well. He specifically said, considering the British statement on the possibility of nuclear attacks on Russia without consulting NATO, listen, we can carry out a nuclear strike against Great Britain without consulting NATO either. Great Britain is the primary target. It is an island nation that would minimize damage to the continent. It has a weak missile defense. If they can move without consulting NATO, then Article 5 of the Collective Defense may not apply. So, folks, this is what we have going on. We do have the official entry of NATO into Ukraine, folks, and this was another red line of Russia and Putin. And Vladimir Putin made it specifically very, very clear months ago, and so did the Russian Federation, that if NATO enters this war, if NATO troops enter this war directly, then NATO bases would become targets for Russian missiles and Russian attack. We now have this situation now developing in Ukraine. Russia has officially announced that British special forces, NATO forces, are operating in Ukraine, a violation of Russia's red lines. So where is this going to go, folks? We predicted this. We told you this was going to happen. A lot of people didn't believe me, but now we're seeing this on the ground. And things are fixing to heat up very, very quickly. I told you in a video about a week ago that Ben Hodges, the former commander of all forces in Europe, said that NATO had 3 weeks. NATO had 3 weeks to crush Russia and Ukraine. I don't know if you guys remember the video. You need to go back and watch that video. But Ben Hodges, the former commander of Europe, said in a TV interview that Russia must be defeated, must be crushed within the next 3 weeks before they can defeat the Donbass forces. And it does look like that NATO is going to that playbook. We also have reports that Finland now has put their application in for NATO membership. Russia has responded, and they said that they will be sending forces to the Russian border across from Finland. Folks, a lot of things are accelerating, and I do believe the next 3 weeks are going to be life-changing for everyone in the world, that we possibly could see a nuclear war. But before we get to this, I want to show you another article here. Let me see if we have anything left on this one we were just reading. I think that's about it. That is it on it. So let me show you this, what Russia has been warning the world. And I want to show you this because this is very important. Russia has spies in Ukraine. They know what they know what's happening. They know what is being planned. Russia has been warning for weeks and weeks that the United States and NATO is going to provoke an attack with Russia with biological, nuclear, or chemical weapons. They have been warning the world this for over 3 weeks. And this does look like it's being set up. These 24 special forces of Great Britain or the UK, they are experts in sabotage and doing these type of false flag attacks. So let me go ahead and get this on the screen. To document this information is very, very important that we document everything that we're talking about on our channel, because I don't want people coming back and saying that I just made this stuff up. I want you to know the truth, and that's why we do these news reports, to let you guys know exactly what is happening on the ground. So this next article we're going to show you, well, the next few articles are going to document this very scenario, that there is going to be a huge false flag attack. It will be involved with weapons of mass destruction, either chemical, nuclear, or biological, and it will be blamed on Russia so that NATO can put their full force, the entire NATO military, to attack Russia. The United States, the last 2 or 3 months, have been shipping arms and weapons, heavy weapons, into Europe on a nonstop basis. We are on a war footing right now. The whole of NATO is on a war footing to confront Russia. All they need is one pretext, folks. All NATO is looking for is a pretext to go ahead and attack Russia directly. They have been trying to use all of these killings. They saying that Russia is massacring civilians. That did not work. So now they're going to the next level, and I'm going to show you the evidence, folks. This is the evidence that we have. U.S. prepares provocations to accuse Russia of using tactical nuclear weapons. This is coming directly from Russia. This is coming from Russian news agency TASS. According to the chief of the Russian Radiation, Chemical and Biological Protection Force, Igor Krylov, the plan is a reaction to Russia's success in the special operations. So this is the general right here that is making these statements directly from Russia. They're warning the world, and they have been warning the world the last 3 weeks, that the United States and NATO is preparing a huge provocation to blame Russia so that they can get directly involved and activate Article 5. The United States is preparing provocations to accuse the Russian side of using chemical, biological, or tactical nuclear weapons. Chief of Russian Radiation, Chemical, and Biological Protection Force Igor Krylov announced on Saturday. And that was yesterday. The Russian Ministry of Defense has information about the United States preparing provocations to accuse Russian armed forces of using chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons, he said. According to Krylov, the plan is a reaction to Russia's success in the special operation. In March and April of this year alone, the leadership of Western countries regularly made provocative statements about the possibility of Russia using weapons of mass destruction. So Russia is putting it out there. So when this happens, folks, you'll know what happened. You'll know that this is just as another false flag to get us into the war. So let's go to another article stating the same thing. We're going to give you multiple articles showing you that this is what Russia has been putting out to the world, that they are trying to warn the world in advance. When this happens, you'll know who did it. But folks, the world's going to blame it on Russia. So this next article is coming in from RT Television. This is Russian television, RT, which is financed by the Russian government. They are putting this information out today, actually last night. United States plans to accuse Russia of using nukes in Ukraine. The Russian Defense Ministry says Washington wants to use weapons of mass destruction to frame Moscow. Russia has announced the U.S. planning to use weapons of mass destruction, the WMDs, in Ukraine in order to frame Moscow. The U.S. is preparing a provocation aimed at accusing the Russian armed forces of using chemical, biological, or tactical nuclear weapons. Lieutenant General Igor Krylov, the head of the Russian Federation, the Russian Radiation, Chemical, and Biological Protection Force, said on Saturday. According to Krylov, the supposed plans include three scenarios. The most probable scenario, he says, is a false flag on civilians or an act of sabotage on Ukrainian sites which were involved in the development of the components of weapons of mass destruction. Krylov claimed that the potential targets are the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station, which has been controlled by Russia since early March, and the site of a former chemical plant in Kremenskorsky in eastern Ukraine. The RBC Ukrainian media outlet reported last year that the plant at I can't pronounce it, but Kremenskory was used for uranium enrichment in Soviet times and still contains nuclear waste. Krylov said the Russian Ministry of Defense obtained a document which shows the facilities there are in critical condition. The second option mentioned by Krylov involves discreetly using weapons of mass destruction in small quantities. He claimed that the Pentagon initially planned to deploy weapons of mass destruction in the Azovstal large steel mill in Azov seaport of Mariupol, while Russian and Donbass troops largely controlled the city. A handful of Ukrainian troops and civilians have remained holed up in the mill, mostly underground. On Thursday, Russian President Vladimir Putin called off the assault on the mill, opting for a blockade instead. The last option is what Krylov called the open use of weapons of mass destruction on the battlefield. He said it could be used in the Donbass towns of Slavyansk and Kramatorsk, which are close to the front lines and controlled by Kiev. Krylov called this scenario the least probable. The general said that last month, Russian intelligence services found 3 spray drones in Ukraine, southern Kherson region. He argued that the UAVs could be used to spray biological agents and toxic chemicals. Krylov claimed that the vials of an unknown substance were airdropped on Thursday on Russian troops. The vials are being studied by the defense ministry. Krylov noted that Russia's disposed of all its chemical weapons in 2017, while the Soviet Union scrapped its biological weapons program in the 1972. Moscow previously claimed that Ukraine has maintained U.S.-funded bioweapons laboratory research programs, citing what it said were documents from the country's several laboratories. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky strongly denied these allegations, saying that the labs were only conducting ordinary scientific research. Okay, don't have to worry about that. In an interview aired on CNN last week, Zelensky said that all countries have to be worried that Russia might use nuclear or chemical weapons. So, folks, listen to this. I want to tell you what's going on. We tried to discuss this before, but we tried to tell you that Russia, they have no reason to use weapons of mass destruction. They have zero reasons. The only benefit it would be for weapons of mass destruction to be used in Ukraine would be used by the United States and NATO to frame Russia. Russia knows that if this is done by their country, the world will come against them. The world opinion will go against Russia 100%. If Russia is absolutely caught using weapons of mass destruction, Russia has no incentive to do that. It would not benefit Russia to use chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons in Ukraine, folks. They don't need to. They're winning the war. Russia is winning this war right now. They're not losing the war, no matter what the Western propaganda is stating. There's no reason, logical reason Russia would do that. The only reason that these weapons would be used to frame Russia so the world would go against them, public opinion, and Joe Biden could get on TV. Russia, they use chemical weapons. They killed thousands of Ukrainians. Oh, they set off a small nuke or dirty bomb. We're going to have to get involved and stop them right now, folks. That's the only reason that this is being set up right now. You don't have to believe me. You can say, yeah, Russia. Why would Russia use a nuke or these agents and it could kill Russian soldiers? Folks, they're not stupid. This is going to be another false flag perpetrated on the world to get us fully involved in this war, folks. And right now, Russia has an excuse. They have an excuse to start bombing NATO bases around the world because the United Kingdom has sent in their special forces. We already knew they were there. I told you this months ago. But now Russia has documented the actual insertion of United Kingdom special forces into Ukraine. And Boris Johnson is going on TV now telling the world that they're going to nuke Russia in case Russia uses weapons of mass destruction. Remember Iraq, folks. Remember the country of Iraq. Remember Saddam Hussein. Do you remember when Colin Powell went before our Congress and told the American people, told the world that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, that we needed to go into Iraq to eradicate Saddam Hussein's forces and take control of his weapons of mass destruction? Folks, that was an outright lie. There was no weapons of mass destruction found. Scott Ritter, who was one of the people working for the United States and the United Nations, was a weapons inspector. He went into Iraq, folks. Scott Ritter, we did a report about Scott Ritter. He was a Marine Corps intelligence officer that was involved in Desert Storm. He was retired from the military. He was a UN weapons inspector. He was in Iraq, and he went against George Bush's administration and told the world that there was no weapons of mass destruction. He was one of the inspectors looking for these bombs and chemicals. So, folks, there has been lie upon lie upon lie to get us into wars over the last 30 years. And now, United States and NATO looks like it's going to be perpetrating another huge false flag attack so we can attack Russia directly, folks. Finland just admitted their application to NATO for joining NATO. If that happens, then we are closer to Russia attacking Finland. So, folks, this war is going to be expanding. I want to get all of these new articles for you, but I'm just trying to show you and document all this information. You know, a lot of people, they don't believe me. They don't believe me what is happening. But let's read one more. I'm just trying to give you the evidence so you'll know the truth. A lot of people don't want to hear the truth. They only want to hear one side of the propaganda war. There are two sides, folks. In a court of law, you have the defense attorney, the prosecutor, and the judge. You're the judge. I'm giving you both the information from both sides. You make the decision of who is telling the truth. But most YouTube channels, they're only going to give you one side of the information. They're not going to give you what I'm giving you because they don't want you knowing the truth. I want you knowing the truth, folks. So let's go ahead and let's look at some more truth of what is actually happening. You're not going to know the truth unless you get information from the other side. And you're going to have to decide whether this information is true or not. So let's read this one. This is coming in from Sputnik News. The United States has moved on to weapons of mass destruction provocations after economic pressure against Russia has failed, Maria Zakharova has said. Earlier on Saturday, the chief of Russian nuclear, chemical, and biological protection troops revealed U.S. plans to stage provocations to accuse Moscow baselessly on using chemical, biological, or even tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine to discredit its ongoing military operation in the country. The Russian military's revelations about suspected U.S. plans to accuse Russian forces of using weapons of mass destruction in Ukraine are a sign that Washington has moved on to Plan B after the failure of its attempts to sanction Russia into submission. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova has said. The reason is clear. The shocking details of the illegal cooperation between the United States and the current Ukrainian authorities in the field of creating bacteriological weapons have been revealed to the world, and the understanding of the inevitability of the detection of their criminal activities was so obvious that Washington began to prepare in advance, Zakharova wrote in a post on her Telegram page on Saturday, pointing to Undersecretary of State Victoria Nuland's confirmation in a Senate testimony in March on the presence of biological research facilities in Ukraine. Amid fears that these facilities would fall into Russian hands, the Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman suggested that Washington has decided to spin the story, the agenda, and prepare for a terrible provocation whose victims may include Russian servicemen and Ukrainian civilians alike. So we told you about this, folks. We told you all of this. We showed you. We even showed you Victoria Nuland when she was testifying before the Senate, admitting that there are over 30 United States-funded biological weapons laboratories in Ukraine. Over 30, folks. When the news broke, it was only 12. The news media said when the story broke months ago that there was only 12 biological weapons laboratories, and Victoria Nuland got the record straight. She admitted on camera before the United States Senate that there are over 30 biological weapons laboratories in Ukraine. Russia has taken over a large part of these. They have secret documents of the United States running these laboratories, concocting bioweapons to target Russia. So these are the facts. You don't have to believe me. I will leave all the links in the description box. Go back and read the articles yourself, folks. And this is going to escalate. Ben Hodges, like I said before earlier when we started, was the commander of Europe. He is retired now. He said that the United States and NATO had 3 weeks to crush Russia in Ukraine. They have a 3-week timeline to the end of this month into next month to totally obliterate Russian forces in Ukraine, or Russia would take over Ukraine. And this exactly does look like what is happening in the world. So, folks, the world's a dangerous place. It's fixing to get a lot worse. Now, a lot of people, we have been warning people a long time to get prepared, but I have an exercise for you guys. We have 1,422 people watching our program. Now, a lot of people are preppers that watch our program. A lot of people are just new to this information. But if you want to know what's going to happen to your family, if you want to really prepare, I urge you to do this. Now, most people are not going to do this, but if you want to know the scenario, what's going to happen when the lights go out, this is a drill that you can perform at your own house. And everybody can do this. In case of an EMP attack against the United States of America, the power grid will go out. Your car will not start. Your cell phone will not work. None of the electronics that you depend on a daily basis will work. I have a homework for you guys to do. You can do this for 1 day. You can do it for a week, but you need to practice what you are going to do if your power goes out. So this is the exercise that I propose to you. You can do this on a weekend. Maybe do it this weekend here. Shut your breaker off, folks. Go to your breaker panel in your house. Shut the power off. take all of your cell phones, put them in a bag, and don't use your cell phones. Don't go anywhere in your car, because what you are wargaming, you are practicing what is going to happen to your family when the power goes out. You can do this in your own house. Turn your power off, folks, for a week or a day. See how your family reacts. See how your wife reacts. See how your children react when they don't have a cell phone, when you don't have a cell phone, when your power doesn't work, your electricity doesn't work, and your car doesn't start. And folks, if you can't get by a day or two or a week without your power, you're not going to survive the apocalypse. You're not going to survive. A lot of people, oh, we're prepped, we're ready, we got food, we got batteries. Folks, this is a drill that you can practice. See how your kids, your teenage kids, sons and daughters, react when you take away their cell phones. And we're saying, family, we're going to sit down as a family and we're going to practice going without cell phones for a couple of days, and see how your family reacts. They'll turn on you. Most people can't live without their cell phones. But if you want to know a real world situation, folks, this is called a drill. The United States does it. Other people in the world do it. They drill for worst case scenarios. That you're not going to have electricity. You're not going to have running water. Your freezer and your refrigerator, your food will go bad. You're not going to be able to go to the store because your car won't start. You're not going to be able to get updates. Nobody's going to be able to call you or text you because your cell phone will not work. Unless you practice this in real life, you're not going to know how you're going to react. And most people's going to flip out. Most people can't imagine a life without electricity, a life without their cell phone. Folks, they can't do it. So I urge you, I challenge you, everyone that watching, we have 1,450, do it for a day, folks. Just do it for one day and see how your wife and your kids react when you take away their cell phones and put them in a bag and say, no, we're going to practice that your cell phone doesn't work. What are you going to do when your kids start yelling and screaming, give me my cell phone, I'm going to kill you, Dad, give me my, what are you going to do when your wife turns on you? I've got to go to the store, I've got to go see my friends. Well, honey, you can't do that because the car won't start. There's no electricity in the city. We've been under attack from an EMP. You need to learn now who's going to turn on you, folks. You really do, because your family is the one that's going to be turning on you, because you're the provider. As the man of the household, they're going to turn on you because it's your fault. When the power goes out, no matter whose fault it is, they're going to blame you. Why didn't you prepare? You knew this was coming. Why didn't you prepare? Why didn't you have backup power? So, folks, I'm trying to give you a heads up. I'm trying to give you a head start. Do this simple drill. It's very easy. Go to your breaker panel box, shut the power off for a day, a week, take your cell phones away, lock your car keys up for a week, and see how you're going to react in a world simulation that the power is completely out. We're at war. You don't know what happened in the world. Can you survive for a day? Can you survive for a week? Folks, if you can't pass this drill, you're going to die very soon because your family's not prepared. Being a prepper is more than going to the grocery store and buying groceries. It's living a world simulation, that what would happen in a real world simulation. And most people can't fathom what's going to happen, folks. They can't. When their food runs out, where all the food in their refrigerator spoils because they have no backup power. They have no backup food supply. They don't know how to cook without electricity. They don't know how to build a fire. They have no alternative to their air conditioner, folks. They think they do, but they really don't. So anyway, I wanted to cover that and let you know that things could get real hairy in the world. And if one day you wake up, folks, and you turn your light switch on and it doesn't work, and you go to your car to go to work in the morning and it doesn't work, and you look down the street and all your neighbors are in their car and the wives are out, screaming at their husbands in your neighborhood, you'll know what happened. We're either under an EMP attack or something happened that your power is out. And you need to start practicing right now. How are you going to bug out with your backpack? Everybody says, well, we'll just bug out in the woods, folks. But if your car doesn't start, how are you going to go to the woods? Are you going to strap your backpacks on now and then run to the woods that are 50 miles away along with your neighbors with 2 bottles of water? You'll run out of water before you even get there. Most people have not thought this out. What are they going to do in an emergency situation, folks? They think they know, but they really don't, because they have not practiced living without electricity. And if we do get in World War III with Russia, believe me, the power is going to go out eventually, and even worse. So I'm trying to help you here. I'm trying to give you a heads up, because we could be in that situation in the coming weeks or months. If this continues to escalate like I told you it would, and we are already seeing this happen. Folks, let's keep on going with the articles. We've got a lot of information for you guys. Let's talk about Finland right now and what's going to happen in Finland with Russia, because this is very important information that we're giving you right now, that Finland is about to join NATO. That was another Russian red line that Russia has warned Finland also, that if they join NATO, Finland will be wiped off the map. Do you understand what I'm saying? Russia has put out several red lines 3 or 4 months ago. They have warned these other countries that if you join NATO, they warned Finland, Sweden, and Norway. They warned them, folks, and nobody's taking President Putin at his word. They're dismissing what he says. So now this is happening, just like we told you. The United States is encouraging Finland and Sweden and all these other countries to join NATO right now, so they can put NATO forces on the border of Russia, folks. This has been planned for over 30 years, that NATO has planned to take Russia out. Now their plan is going into effect, and I do believe that we are going to be full-blown in a nuclear war pretty soon, folks. I don't have a date, but if this continues to escalate like I think it is, it's not going to be very long. So let's go ahead and read this article right now. This is coming in from War News 24/7. History repeats itself. Putin's omen for Finland. NATO forces within breathing distance of St. Petersburg. History is repeating itself for Russia. The Finnish parliament has approved the country's membership in NATO, breaking the historic agreement with Russia on neutrality. So, folks, listen. Finland agreed with Russia. This document has been in force for over 80 years, since World War II. Finland agreed not to join NATO. They agreed, they made a legal agreement with Russia. They are breaking the agreement with Russia to join NATO, crossing another one of Russia's red lines. Let's read the implications of what just happened. History repeats itself for Russia. The Finnish parliament has approved the country's membership in NATO, breaking the historic agreement with Russia on neutrality. 56% of the members of the Finnish parliament, 112 of the 200 Finnish MPs, have voted in favor of the country joining the North Atlantic Alliance a few hours ago. This means that in the next 1 to 2 weeks, Finland will send a formal application for the country to join NATO. Consequently, the course of the Winter War of 1939 reappears, which led to the Second World War, the second conflict, the War of Continuality. Finland overturns the agreement. This was the cause of the two historic wars, World War I and World War II. In 1938, the then USSR worried about the possibility of a two-sided struggle with Hitler's Germany. In particular, he believed that the Germans would transfer forces to their ally, Finland, and from there would advance to St. Petersburg, then Leningrad, which was only 32 kilometers from the Finnish border. Therefore, in April 1938, they demanded the transfer of the Finnish territory to the Karelian Isthmus in order to create a buffer zone around Leningrad. In return, the Finns would be given Soviet territory on the northern border between the two countries. Their request was not accepted, and the war started in 1939 or 1938. Actually, it started a little bit later, 1941. From 1941 to 1944, the War of Continuality, or World War II, by Finland and Nazi Germany followed as allies against the Soviet Union. In Russian history, the war is called the Finnish Front of the Great Patriotic War, which is World War II. In both of these wars, the then USSR sought the neutrality of Finland and the protection of St. Petersburg by repelling enemy military forces. The same arguments are put forward by Moscow in the war with Ukraine. And now they are overturned by the Finland's ascension to NATO. British armed vehicles and tanks have already appeared in Finland for preparatory exercises for NATO membership. NATO troops will be within breathing distance of just 32 kilometers from the historic city of St. Petersburg, which will sooner or later be within range of U.S. HIMARS and ATACM missiles. Russia no longer has many options. Now, this is Scott Ritter.
Finland and NATO.
I want you to listen to this real quick. Let me blow this up. And this is Scott Ritter, folks, that we have been telling you about. Scott Ritter is the retired United States Marine Corps intelligence officer that served in Iraq. He served in Russia as a U.S. weapons inspector. He went to Russia to verify that the Soviet Union was destroying their nuclear weapons. He is highly respected, highly intelligent. He's been around for a long time. Let's listen to what Scott Ritter says about the current situation, folks, because this is very, very interesting, and I want you to listen to this.
Finland and NATO. For decades, Finland has enjoyed a unique status in Europe, being a neutral nation that borders both Russia and NATO and having good relations with both. But a recent statement by Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin that Finland would be seeking to join NATO has turned this relationship with Russia upside down.
The European security architecture have changed fundamentally.
Marin has said that Russia's invasion of Ukraine has compelled Finland to reevaluate its relation both with Russia and for the need to be part of a defensive alliance like NATO.
The change in the security landscape make it necessary to analyze how we best secure peace for Finland.
Finland has enjoyed good relations with Russia. This hasn't always been the case. In 1939, Finland fought a short 3-month war with the then Soviet Union over issues pertaining to the security of Leningrad. From 1941 to 1944, Finland fought the War of Continuation, aligning with Nazi Germany to wage conflict against the Soviet, including laying siege to the city of Leningrad, in which over 1 million Soviet citizens died. In 1949, Finland signed a peace treaty with the Soviet Union, promising perpetual neutrality in exchange for giving up some territory that would bring security to the Soviet Union and later to Russia. And this relationship remained the same. The irony is that in joining NATO, Finland is replicating the same eastward expansion of NATO that caused Russia great concern when it came to Ukraine. Already the Russians have said that there will be a military solution. This means at a minimum the redeployment of considerable Russian troops along the Finnish border and the termination of the nuclear-free zone that the Baltic region had enjoyed. If Finland joins NATO, Russia will be deploying nuclear forces into the region. One has to wonder what kind of security Finland will have at that point in time.
I won't give any kind of timetable when we will make our decisions, but I think it will happen quite fast, within weeks, not within months.
This has been Scott Ritter, your 2-minute topic for April 20th, 2022.
So, folks, this is the situation that we have right now. We have, as of this morning, on April the 24th, 2022, we have confirmation of British special forces being inserted right now into Ukraine, a violation of Russia's red lines. We also have the country of Finland, which has broke the peace agreement with Russia, now going to join NATO, which is another one of Russia's red lines. We have the situation being set up for a false flag attack that's going to be performed probably in Ukraine and blamed on the Russians, thus giving NATO and the United States an excuse to get into the war, just like we did during Desert Storm when we attacked Iraq and killed over 1 million Iraqi citizens over a period of 3 or 4 years while we were deployed in that country. Folks, it's all repeating itself. History is repeating itself. We are on the verge of another world war we haven't seen in over 80 years. And unfortunately, folks, I think hundreds of millions of people will die from this war in the next coming months and years if this goes nuclear. And it's not going to be a very long war. If this war accelerates into the use of nuclear weapons, even if they're tactical, folks, this will quickly accelerate into the large ICBMs that Russia and the United States has, folks. That's the only logical conclusion, that this will not just be contained to nuclear small tactical weapons, because once the button gets pushed, folks, once the nuclear threshold is reached, then this will quickly accelerate, because each side wants to gain the upper hand. They don't want to lose. And in doing so, they're going to destroy large parts, probably of the United States, of Europe, of Russia. Nobody wins in a nuclear war but Satan. That's the only one who wins, because the ultimate goal is depopulation. This is part of the New World Order, folks, depopulation of the world. They want to get the world's population down to a manageable 500 million people. That means that 6.5 or 7 billion people must have to die, folks, according to Klaus Schwab, who wrote the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset, according to people like Bill Gates, Ted Turner, Henry Kissinger, and all of these people that run the world. You are a useless eater. You must be eliminated from the face of the earth, because they want to cleanse the earth of useless eaters. They only want their elite to be left alive, folks. 500 million. That means that everybody else on the face of the planet must be gone. They're trying to do this by 2030. They want to have this completely completed by 2030. If any of you know who Deagle.com is, Deagle.com keeps track of the world's populations and major world events. Now, a few years ago, Deagle.com predicted that the United States, by 2025, that is just a few years from now, the population in the United States will be reduced at least by 200 million people. How is that going to happen, folks? And they have been pretty accurate in predicting the future populations of the world. They predicted that the United States is going to lose 200 million Americans in the next 3 years. How is that going to happen? It's going to happen either from biological weapons, a massive plague, or a nuclear war. So, folks, I'm giving you the truth. You can look it up yourself. A lot of people know who Deagle.com is, but that's the information that was put out years ago. So let's keep on going. There's a little bit more to this article. I want to keep on going and showing you NATO is suffocating St. Petersburg and Kaliningrad. And what you have to realize is that NATO has planned this for over 30 years, the takedown of Russia. We have planned this because we cannot allow Russia and China to dethrone the American petrodollar. This is about the petrodollar. This is about who is going to rule the world after the pole shift. And that's another subject that we need to do a whole live chat on, the coming pole shift and the wrath of God. There is a pole shift coming that's going to destroy large parts of the world with natural disasters. It has happened before. It's happened about every 3,600 years. It's a cyclical thing that happens to our earth about every 3,600 years. We are on that verge right now. So all the world's powers are going to be fighting it out to see who's going to be standing before this pole shift happens, folks. And this is not a conspiracy theory, folks. This is documented. I do have the documentation that this has happened thousands and thousands of years ago. We're going to discuss that on another breaking special news report. But let's keep on going to what we're talking about. That NATO is planning on taking Russia out now and doing it now. So let's keep on going. And I just had the article. Hold on. I took the article off. So let me get the article back up and we'll finish this, what we were talking about here. And I've got to actually get it back on the screen. So NATO is suffocating St. Petersburg and Kaliningrad. Russia is now under stifling pressure with Ukraine's front open and slow to close. NATO is opening another front, and that is of Finland. Russian analysts admit that NATO is putting dangerous pressure on Russia, especially from the Baltic side to the Gulf of Finland. According to the characteristics, St. Petersburg and Kaliningrad cannot be saved in case of war except by using nuclear weapons. Unless, folks, unless Finland is prevented from joining NATO. In the same context, they noted NATO exercise Name GIS 2022, which already started on April the 18th in Latvia and will last until May the 27th. NATO described these exercises as an opportunity to improve the interoperability of national and NATO forces in the event of wrong actions by Russia in the context of conflict with Ukraine. It should be noted that Latvian journalists do not hesitate to report on how many units of U.S. military equipment were brought into Latvia. In addition, they reassure citizens who may be somewhat shocked to see such an unusual military activity in their country. About 3,000 troops and hundreds of military units from the U.S., the Czech Republic, Poland, Great Britain, Lithuania, Estonia, Albania, Italy, Iceland, Montenegro, Canada, Slovakia, Slovenia were deployed as part of the enlarged NATO battle group in Latvia. Currently, a significant part of the forces and means of the Western Military District of the Russian Armed Forces is involved in a special operation of Ukraine on Ukraine territory, and NATO is conducting fire drills near the Russian border. At the same time, the alliance continues to concentrate its troops on the Polish-Belarusian border. Thus, the West is exerting increasing pressure on Moscow and the Union state of Russia and Belarus as a whole, creating a military infrastructure near the borders of the Russian Federation and Belarus. What will be Russia's response to these genuinely hostile gestures will be known in the near future. Putin's oracle for Finland. In 2016, during a joint press conference after the talks of then the president of Finland, Sauli Niinistöä, Putin had said, Russia comes from the fact that Finland is a neutral country. Russia keeps its troops away from the Finnish border. Let's imagine Finland joining NATO. This would mean that Finland's defense forces would cease to be independent. Instead, they will be part of NATO's infrastructure, which will be so close to the border of Russia. In this case, Russian troops will not be at a distance of 1,500 kilometers from the border of Finland, but will again move to the border of this country. Then Putin stressed that NATO is happy to fight to the last Finnish soldier, and Russia does not want that. The same phrase has been used by Putin and other high-ranking Russian officials for Ukraine to describe what is exactly happening right now. And we told you this on our last broadcast, folks. We told you that NATO and the United States does not mind using the last Ukrainian soldier to further its goals. United States and NATO could care less about these countries. They could care less about the Ukrainian citizen. They could care less about the Polish citizen or the Finnish citizen, folks. All NATO and the United States cares about is destroying Russia, and they don't care who has to die to achieve the goals. I'm telling you the truth. Joe Biden, he could care a rip about what happens in Ukraine, folks. The only goal is to funnel billions of dollars into Ukraine. Folks, what happens to all that money we're giving Zelensky? You know, the United States has signed a $14 billion package 3 weeks ago, allocating up to $14 billion for the country of Ukraine. Where is that money going? Who is keeping an eye on that money as soon as it reaches Ukraine? Is it going into Zelensky's Swiss bank accounts? Is it being funneled back to Hunter Biden or Joe Biden, folks? That's a money laundering country. I mean, they could be laundering billions of dollars through Ukraine right now, saying it's for humanitarian assistance. Folks, no one really knows where that money is going. Have you ever thought about that? That we're just writing blank checks, we're sending all that military equipment over, and Russia is destroying most of this equipment once it reaches Ukraine, folks. So, folks, the world is in a mess. Let's continue reading what is happening about Finland. Finland exercises with NATO continues. Finland has intensified exercises with NATO countries as it is in the final stages of joining the alliance. In fact, the British Foreign Office announced the transfer of tanks from the Royal Hussar Regiment, the armor regiment, to Finland to reinforce and conduct exercises with the Finnish combat teams. At the same time, Typhoon fighter jets from the RAF base Losemouth proceeded with exercises with Finnish, German, and Belgium aircraft over Estonia as part of the NATO exercises Ramstein Alloy. During the exercises, the Finnish Air Force's F-18s were refueled by the RAF Voyager refueling planes. The Danish frigate F-342 Esbern Snare then carried out exercises with the FNS-81 Torino from the Finnish fleet of the Baltic region. So, folks, there are right now exercises going on in the country of Finland. Britain, the United Kingdom, has already sent their tanks to Finland, folks. They're having exercise. So this was planned a long time ago. And you can probably expect that Norway is going to be next. Norway will probably also join NATO. So United States and NATO is opening up different fronts surrounding Russia. They plan on attacking Russia, I do believe, from all sides. This was what was being planned 30 years ago. And you have to ask yourself, does Russia have a right to defend itself? Does the country of Russia have legitimate security concerns about their national security that they are going to be attacked by NATO? Folks, this was planned 30, 40 years ago to attack Russia. And everybody wants to get upset that Russia now has attacked Ukraine, trying to protect their country from being invaded and taken over by NATO and destroyed. But I'm going to give you an example how that we are such a hypocrite that it doesn't matter if we're on Russia's border, but we don't want Russia on our borders, do we? The United States and NATO doesn't want Russian and Chinese forces on their borders. And let me give you a current example of what is happening, if I can find that. If I can find the article, I just had the article. All right, this has happened before. I got these articles up and then they seem to disappear before I can find them. All right, and that's not it. Okay, here we go. So let me get this article up. I want you to read along with me. This is coming in from Zero Hedge that we told you earlier in the broadcast that China has signed an agreement, a military agreement with the Solomon Islands to allow them to put military bases on the Solomon Islands that is very close to the country of Australia. And Australia has openly threatened to bomb the Solomon Islands, to invade the Solomon Islands. And the United States has just also threatened the Solomon Islands that if you allow China to come into your country and put bases, we will attack you. And there will be a response from the United States. So, folks, there is a double standard in the world. United States preaches democracy around the world, freedom around the world for countries to be free to do what they want, unless they don't do what we say. The whole world is free to do whatever they want, as long as it goes along with what we tell them to do. If one of these countries in the world crosses us and does something that we don't like, well, we either sponsor a regime change, we take over their country, or we put economic sanctions on their country if they do not toe the line. And that is exactly what is happening now in the Solomon Islands. So let's read it, folks. We're the biggest hypocrite in the world. We tell the world that we stand for freedom and you have a right to be free and choose your own destiny, as long as it aligns with our policies. So let's go ahead and read this. U.S. to respond accordingly if the Solomon Islands China Pact permits military bases. The United States has warned the Solomon Islands leadership that it would respond accordingly if a military installation on the Pacific Islands nation is allowed under the terms of the Solomon Islands China Security Pact. The White House stated on Friday that a high-level U.S. delegation has met with the Solomon Islands leadership in Honiara and raised concerns about the purpose and transparency of the agreement. According to its statement, Solomon Islands officials have clarified that the security deal was solely for domestic applications, but the U.S. delegation claimed that it posed potential regional security implications for Washington and its allies. If steps are taken to establish a de facto permanent military presence, power projection capabilities, or a military installation, the delegation noted that the United States would then have significant concerns and respond significantly. The White House did not specify how the United States would respond. The U.S. delegation was led by Kurt Campbell, the National Security Council Indo-Pacific Coordinator, Daniel Kentenbrick, the Assistant Secretary of State of Eastern Asia and Pacific Affairs. The White House stated that the Solomon Islands Prime Minister Manasseh Sograve had reassured that no military-based long-term presence or power projection capability would be permitted under the agreement with China. The United States emphasized that it will follow developments closely in construction or in consultation with regional partners. So, folks, I'm going to leave this article so you can read it yourself. But the United States does not, they don't want any competition. They don't want Chinese or Russian forces anywhere near NATO countries or the United States. So we have a double standard, don't we? We talk about Russia invaded Ukraine, but we don't tell you the reasons why. The reasons why, because Russia thought that their national security was being challenged, that that NATO is a threat to their country, which it is, folks, because we are on their borders. Russia is not on the Canadian border or in Mexico or in the Bahamas, folks. They don't have hundreds of thousands of troops and missiles aimed at our country right now in Canada, Mexico, the Bahamas, Cuba. If they did, the United States would be reacting just like Russia is reacting to NATO. So, folks, there's a double standard in the world. Our goal here is to conquer Russia. Ben Hodges told the world that we have 3 weeks now to crush Russia. By the end of April, going into March, there are 3 critical weeks that the NATO must crush Russia, break its back in Ukraine right now. We cannot allow Russia to defeat the Donbass forces. And in order to do that, NATO must get involved and crush them now. So that is what we are seeing being set up. This is going to escalate, folks. We have been right almost 100% on our predictions the last couple of months and even going back to a couple of years ago. Folks, we're not giving you fake news. We're giving you the most accurate information available that you can read. Right now, I document everything that we are saying. You can confirm this information on many news sources. I just happen to use foreign news sources because I want to get the word right out of the horse's mouth. I don't want to go to second and third party. I want to get the information right from the source. I don't want to publish hearsay information. That's why we give you information coming directly from Russia, from the Middle East, from all of these countries, so you can be assured that what we give you is true. It's not fake. It's not propaganda. And then you make the decision by the world events happening around you. So let's go ahead and let's read you some more up-to-date information. The country of Turkey right now has closed the airspace to Russia. So right now, let me get this on the screen for you guys. Turkey is now limiting Russia's overflight of their country going into Syria. Turkey is playing both sides of the war, folks. I hope you can see this. I hope this is on your big screen. But what is happening now is that Turkey is a NATO member. Turkey plays both sides. Turkey is friends with Russia, and they're also friends with NATO. But Turkey is playing a very dangerous game here. And no one really knows whose loyalty Turkey really has. So Turkey now is beginning to favor NATO because they have now closed the airspace to Russian aircraft. Turkey closes Russian airspace to Syria. What it demands from NATO, Moscow and the United States, how Greece is getting involved. The clever neutral strikes again. Turkey has closed its airspace for Russian airlines transporting aircraft to and from Syria with a surprise move last night. Its decision so far concerns only the airstrip to and from Syria. Russia will be able to use Turkish airspace in any other direction. In a statement, the Turkish foreign minister has said that Turkey no longer allows Russia to use its airspace for flights to Syria. It is noteworthy that in his statements, he drew a parallel to the closure of the Bosphorus Straits. He told reporters that we have now closed the airspace for Russian military aircraft, even for civilian aircraft flying to Syria and carrying soldiers. We gave permission for 3 months. They were licensed until April. The president also informed us about this. Then the flight stopped. We acted both in the case of the Montreux Convention and other issues. But Turkey will remain open to commercial flights to and from Russia, refusing to follow the EU in closing its airspace to Russian flights because of the importance of the country's tourism to the country. So that is what is happening, folks. But the reason they're doing this, the reason Turkey is doing this is because they want concessions from the United States. They want concessions from Joe Biden. Turkey is in the process of negotiating the sale of new F-16 fighters from the United States. Turkey wants 40 brand new F-16 fighters, and they want the United States to upgrade 80 of their fighter jets. So Turkey now is trying to negotiate that with the United States. So they're doing these things against Russia. Turkey is working both sides. So folks, this is very, very dangerous of what they're doing. And I don't know if they're going to get on the bad side of Putin. Who knows? But this is what is currently going on. So let's get to some more news. We have all kinds of things going on in the world. What we're going to talk about now is the ongoing attacks that is happening in the United States to food production plants, folks. We reported on our last video that within a matter of hours, I believe NATO special forces have set on fire 2 strategic locations in Russia. That happened just a few days ago. One of their missile defense research facilities was set on fire the same day Russia's largest chemical plant was set on fire. And now we have the third. We have the third major Russian facility that controls Russia's space operations that have now been set on fire and destroyed. I believe by NATO special forces have now been inserted into Russia, destroying critical infrastructure. And we have the reverse also going on now in the United States with our food production plant, folks. So let me get this article up so you can see it. The FBI warns of targeted cyber attacks on food plants after mysterious rash of fires. So within the last couple months, there have been over 20 major food production facilities in the United States that have been either blown up or set on fire, arson, destroying a large capability of the food production in the United States. Is the United States doing this to our own country, or is this Russia or China sabotaging our facilities, folks? No one really knows. So let's read you this article. FBI warns of targeted cyber attacks on food plants after mysterious rash of fires. The FBI Cyber Division published a notice this past week warning about increased cyber attack threats on agricultural cooperatives, which comes at a time when a curious string of fires and explosions have damaged major food processing plants across the country. Ransomware actors may be more likely to attack agricultural cooperatives during critical planting and harvest seasons, disrupting operations, causing financial losses, and negatively impacting the food supply chain. The notice reads, adding 2021 and early 2022, ransomware attacks on farming co-ops could affect the current planting season by disrupting the supply of seeds and fertilizer. The agency warned a significant disruption of grain production could impact the entire food chain, since grain is not only consumed by humans, but also for animal feed. In addition, a significant disruption of grain and corn production could impact commodities and trading stocks. The FBI warning comes as nearly 24 food processing facilities across Canada and the United States have experienced a string of fires, plane crashes, and explosions. So these are just some of the food processing centers that have went up. The most recent incidents were fires at 2 Oregon-based food processing plants. The first on Monday night, a fire destroyed a Zoomer Standards Joint Headquarters and warehouse facilities. The second was an explosion on Tuesday at a Shearer's food plant. So these are some of the, if you want to look at this, blow this up on your screen. These are some of the food processing plants that have been destroyed. So folks, things are happening in the world. Nobody knows really if this is Russia or China sabotaging our food production, or if this is the United States government doing this, folks. Do you know that Joe Biden told U.S. farmers not to plant crops? Joe Biden came on, had a press conference, and told U.S. farmers not to plant a lot of their crops. He told them that if you do, we will withhold farm subsidies from your land. So, folks, there is an intentional plot to break the food chain, the supply chains around the world. They are creating a man-made famine, folks. This is all being orchestrated by the New World Order. They want famine to come upon the world. They don't want the world to have enough food to eat. You know how you control an animal, folks? You know, human beings, we are an animal. We are a mammal. We're a human being. We're Homo sapiens. We're humans. How do you control an animal? Any of you guys that have chickens, goats, a dog, cats, you can control an animal very easily by food, by removing that food, and you can control that animal's behavior. When you train your dog for obedience classes, how do they train the dog? They train the dog with rewards. They use treats to train that animal for obedience training. You can control somebody with food or lack of food. We have to eat to survive, folks. So when you limit the food supply, if the only food is available is through the government, then they can control what you do. Folks, they want to control you, but they also want to create worldwide famine, worldwide food distribution, supply chain shortages, and that is what we're seeing around the world. Energy resources now are being limited because of this war in Ukraine. The price of energy, the price when you go fill your tank up at the gas pump, is going way up, especially in Europe, folks. This is all being orchestrated. There's plenty of gas in the world. There's plenty of oil and natural gas, folks, but they're limiting the supply chains by these sanctions on Russia and by all of this other stuff that is going on. So let's keep on going with the articles. So much going on. I'm just going to read you the titles of this. China would support Russia even if it used tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine war, former defense official said. So China is putting out the information that even if Russia does use nukes, they're going to support them, folks. And I do believe that China will eventually attack Taiwan, probably this year sometime. I don't have a time frame, but I think that is coming up. We also have some disturbing news coming in from Russia, that Russia now is warning the airline pilots to get ready for when the GPS system goes down. So I want you to read this along with us. So hopefully this is on the big screen. Let me get the article up for you guys. Russian airlines told to prepare for a world without GPS. So folks, how do you think the GPS is going to go out? How do you think that the GPS system is going to go out? That is the system that the United States has designed. We have about 32 military GPS satellites. Russia is now telling airline pilots that get ready for a world without GPS. Is Russia going to shoot down all of the satellites in space, the GPS satellites? They're warning the world. So let's go ahead and read this article right now. This has come out actually yesterday. Russia's air traffic regulatory sent a warning to airlines about a potential upcoming flights without using American Global Positioning System, the GPS. Russian newspaper Izvesta reported on Friday that a letter to the Federal Air Transport Agency, the FATA, has instructed national airlines to be aware of GPS failures, degradations, and abnormal performance. Areas prone to jamming of GPS signals and spoofing attacks include Russia's western enclave, the Kaliningrad region over the Black Sea, east of Finland, and the Mediterranean. And these are areas circled in red right here that Russia is warning that the GPS signals could be interrupted. The letter said that a FATA would assist aircraft crews when the GPS signals are disrupted or turned off. Pilots are advised to immediately inform air traffic controllers of glitches, degradation, and abnormal performance or GPS or related avionics. Carriers need to assess the risk and limitations associated with failures of navigation instruments and onboard systems using GPS signals, and conduct additional exercises with flight crews to practice actions in the event of failures in the operation of satellite navigation systems. So this is the latest news that is coming out. It's getting really crazy out in the world, folks, that America could be going to jam the GPS signals to affect Russian airlines. No one really knows, but all of this stuff is happening. We have so much happening in the world. And let me read you just another article about how Russia is destroying a lot of these weapons that we are sending to Ukraine. All of these hundreds of millions of dollars of defense aid packages that Joe Biden has approved for Ukraine, Russia is destroying a large amount of these weapons being sent, folks. So that money is being flushed down the toilet. This next article is from RT Television. Russia said it destroyed weapons delivered by the U.S. and the European Union to Ukraine. Let me get this up on the big screen so you can see this. Russia said it destroyed weapons delivered by the United States and European Union to Ukraine. Ukraine claims that residential buildings were also hit, cites civilian casualties. Russian forces have destroyed a logistics terminal in the Odessa area that held a large batch of foreign weapons, Moscow said on Saturday amid its ongoing military offensive in Ukraine. However, the city's authorities claimed that its air defense group destroyed 2 missiles, but that another 4 hit a military target and residential building, leading to civilian casualties. It was not immediately clear if the civilian buildings were hit as a result of attempts by Ukrainian forces to strike down the missiles initially aimed at the military target. According to Russian military spokesman Major Igor Krashnikov, in the afternoon, high-precision long-range air-launched missiles hit a logistics terminal located on a military airfield near Odessa, where a large batch of foreign weapons received from the United States and European countries were stored. Russia has repeatedly warned NATO against sending arms to Ukraine and stated that it will consider arms convoys to be legitimate military targets. So this is the general that has announced that, folks. So it does look like that Russia is destroying hundreds of millions of dollars worth of American equipment, depleting our reserves over here, folks. How are we going to fight a war, a potential war, if all of these weapons that we are sending to Ukraine gets destroyed by Russia? We have already sent thousands and thousands of Javelin missiles, Stinger missiles, a lot of ammunition from our warehouses in America. Folks, if this keeps happening, we're going to be depleting our resources so that we won't have enough arms to defend our country. Is this being done on purpose? Is that the purpose of Joe Biden sending all these weapons, just to get destroyed to Ukraine? Also, Joe Biden, as we have stated, is opening up our national strategic oil reserves, and they're going to be taking out 1 million barrels a day of oil and sending it to Europe, also depleting our national oil reserves. So, folks, things are happening that you really don't know about that is going to impact you on a personal level. Things are accelerating around the world. We have a few more articles. And I want to go to this article now, talking about that China is threatening the United States with war if they interfere when they take Taiwan. We were going to report this the other day, but I could not find the article. So now we're going to report it today, that China has formally informed the United States of America that once they try to take Taiwan, if America and NATO intervenes, that they will be going to war. So let me go ahead and read you this, folks. Bombing or regime change, the first major Sino-U.S. battle at the gates. 4 weeks deadline to prevent Cuba, number 2. Either we are now bombing their capital or we are proceeding immediately with a regime. Oh, I'm sorry. This is over the Solomon Islands, folks. All right. So let's go ahead and read this while we got the article up. We were just talking about this, about how the United States and China were at a loggerhead over the Solomon Islands. So let's go ahead and read this article anyway. Either we are now bombing their capital or we are proceeding immediately with a regime change in the Solomon Islands. This is a proposal made in both Australia and the United States after the signing of the Chinese Solomon Islands Security Treaty. The time frame is 4 weeks in order to overturn the creation of a Cuba, number 2, next to the Australian mainland. In the next 4 weeks, there is also an increased likelihood of Chinese troops and U.S. forces attempting a regime change in the Solomon Islands. China will defend to the end, just as Russia did in Kazakhstan, the security treaty that was just signed. The second solution, as we have said, is the immediate bombing of the Solomon Islands, but the Chinese forces will be directly involved there as well, as the security agreement signed and announced by War News 24/7 allows Beijing to send in police, troops, weapons, and even ships. China has confirmed that it signed a security agreement with the Solomon Islands. So let's see if we can get this on the screen. So let me blow this up and let you watch this real quick. I hope you can read this at the bottom. So the country of the Solomon Islands has signed a security agreement with China. And these are the Solomon Islands that you're looking at.
Ask all our neighbors, friends, and partners. Let me assure the people of Solomon Islands that we entered into an arrangement with China with our eyes wide open, guided by our national interests. We have full understanding of the fragility of peace, and our duty as a state is to protect all people, their properties, and critical national infrastructures of the country.
帮助所方维持社会秩序，应对自然灾害，开展人道主义救助，不针对任何第三方，不取代所现有的双多边安全合作机制。
What I assure them about is that Australia will be there for you as we always are. Not because we want anything from you, but because we see the Pacific as our family and we want to stand by our family and ensure that they can have the sovereignty